Have you ever been in a conversation with someone from another country and just walked away feeling like you were on completely different planets, even though you were speaking the same language? It's that super frustrating feeling of being totally lost in translation. Well, in this explainer, we're going to dive into exactly why that happens and, more importantly, what you can actually do about it.
It really just starts with a single moment, just like this one. This quote is from a US student over in Ireland. She's pouring her heart out, right? Talking about these life-changing experiences she's having. And her brother's response is about the Super Bowl. Oof, you can just feel that massive disconnect, that huge gap that just opened up. It's a perfect example of how much these experiences change us and how tricky it can be to explain that to the people we left back home. And that gap, that feeling of being misunderstood, it so often starts with something that seems tiny, just a single word. We kind of take for granted that a word like, say, individualism means the same thing everywhere. But honestly, that one little assumption, it's often the first wrong step into a total communication minefield. And you can see this so clearly when you look at the data. For American students, individualism is a great word. It's all about freedom, independence, being self-reliant. But for French students, whoa, it's almost the exact opposite. It means egoism, being alone, selfishness. Now, just imagine trying to have a real conversation about your values when the core words you're using mean completely different things to each other. It's almost impossible.
Okay, so it's obvious that words can trip us up big time, but the real roots of these intercultural conflicts, they go way deeper than just your vocabulary. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it. And sometimes it's about what you don't say at all.
Let's just take a super simple request for a cup of tea. If you're an English speaker, hearing "bring me another cup of tea" might sound a little abrupt, maybe even rude. But in other languages like German or Chinese, that directness is totally normal. This is something called pragmatic transfer. It's when we accidentally use the politeness rules from our own language when we're speaking another one. That person isn't trying to be rude, not at all. They're just working from a completely different cultural playbook.
And it gets even more subtle than that. I mean, check this out. This case from researcher John Gumpers is just fascinating. So in a cafeteria in London, you had East Asian workers asking customers if they wanted gravy. Simple enough, right? But the way they said gravy, their intonation fell at the end. To them, that falling tone signals a question. But to the English-speaking customers, that same sound comes across like a command. The result? The servers were seen as pushy and impolite, all because of the little tune of a single word. Crazy, right? So, we've seen all the ways things can go wrong. Misunderstood words, clashing communication styles, even the pitch of your voice can cause problems. But here's the good news. There are frameworks, actual tools we can use to make sense of all this. So, let's build ourselves a toolkit for understanding these unwritten rules. All right, our first tool in the kit is this grid right here. It maps out 5 different ways that people tend to handle conflict. And just think about it for a second. How do you handle disagreements? Is your main goal to win, no matter what? Or is it more important to keep the peace? Maybe you're all about finding a solution where everybody's happy. Your gut reaction to that question actually says a whole lot about your cultural wiring. Let's just quickly break these down. You've got the dominating style, that's a classic I win, you lose. Then there's obliging, which is the total opposite, you win, I lose. It's all about keeping the harmony. Avoiding is kind of the worst of both worlds, where nobody really gets what they want. Compromising is that middle-of-the-road approach where we all give a little. And then there's the holy grail, integrating, the we both win scenario. But yeah, that one usually takes the most work. But why? Why do we lean towards one of these styles over another? Well, the answer comes down to this really critical idea called face. Now, face is basically our public image, right? It's our sense of dignity in any social situation. And according to what's known as face negotiation theory, pretty much every conflict is also a dance to save face, not just for ourselves, but for the other person too. Okay, so first up, you've got self-face. This is all about my concern for my image. Am I looking good here? Am I being respected? This is usually a top priority in more individualistic cultures. Think about a debate where the goal might be to make the best argument just to prove that you're right and protect your own image as being smart. Then you've got other face. This is all about my concern for your image. I really don't want to embarrass you or make you look bad. This focus on the other person's dignity is a much bigger deal in more collectivistic cultures. So in that same debate, the focus might be on phrasing things in a way that doesn't make the other person feel disrespected. And finally, there's mutual face. This is all about protecting the relationship.
It's the idea that we, as a unit, need to get through this with both of our reputations intact. It's about finding a way forward so we can still be friends or colleagues tomorrow. And think back to that student and her brother. Her need to have her experience valued, her self-face, totally clashed with his clumsy attempt to connect over the Super Bowl, which was probably his way of maintaining mutual face. That's a face negotiation breakdown right there. Understanding all that is a huge help, but there's another tool we need. And this quote, it really nails it. If you're in England, you say please and thank you constantly. It's just baseline politeness. But in a Spanish bar, doing that might actually make you seem a little weird because those words are usually saved for bigger things. And this points us to our next tool. It's all about what we call cultural schemas. The best way to think about these is like mental scripts. We all have them for pretty much every situation. How to order a coffee, how to ride the bus, how to say hi to a neighbor. They're so automatic we don't even notice them until we're in a new culture, and suddenly the script is totally different. That's when we feel awkward and completely lost. So far, we've been talking about those short little encounters, but what happens when you're actually living in a new culture for months or even years? Well, that's when you get to ride the emotional roller coaster that we call culture shock. So the classic way to explain this journey is with something called the U-curve. It starts with the honeymoon phase. Everything is amazing, the food is incredible, it's all so new and exciting. But then comes the crisis stage. The novelty starts to fade and all the little daily challenges start to pile up, which leads to a lot of frustration. But if you can push through it, you get to the adjustment phase, where you finally start to feel like you know what you're doing again. But let's be honest, it's rarely that simple and neat. A more realistic view, which is shown beautifully here, is that it's less of a U and more of a spiral. You hit a stressful situation, you adapt, you grow, and then a new stressor comes along and the cycle starts over. But each time, you're moving upward. Stress isn't just the enemy here, it's actually the engine that powers your growth. So what's in the survival kit for handling this spiral? Well, first, do your homework before you even get on the plane. Learn some of the language basics. This one is huge. Make friends with locals. They are your best guides. But also, don't forget your support system back home. You're going to need them. And maybe the most important tip of all, just accept that you're going to make mistakes. It is absolutely part of the process. So after you've navigated all those challenges of living abroad, you might think, okay, the hard part is over. But believe it or not, the journey home has its own set of surprises and, in the end, its biggest reward. This is what's known as re-entry shock, and it can be just as jarring, if not more so, than the first culture shock. You expect home to feel, well, like home, but it often doesn't, because the thing that's really changed is you. Your whole perspective is different, and what used to feel normal can suddenly feel totally alien. Remember that student talking about the Super Bowl? That is re-entry shock in a nutshell. But through all of it, the misunderstandings, the culture shock, the re-entry shock, something really incredible is happening under the surface. You see, the point isn't just to survive the experience. The real prize is developing something called intercultural competence. It's the permanent transformation that comes from going through this whole journey. So what does that even mean, intercultural competence? Well, it boils down to three main things. First, knowledge, not just about other cultures, but a much deeper understanding of your own culture. Second, skills, being able to communicate in a way that's both effective and appropriate. And third, motivation, which is really all about empathy, curiosity, and just being genuinely open to new ways of seeing the world. When you really get down to it, crossing cultures is a journey of transformation. It forces you to question your assumptions, it stretches your ability to feel empathy, and it totally rewires how you see everything. It's not always easy, not by a long shot, but the growth is absolutely profound. So the real question isn't just about where you'll go, it's about who you'll become.